Our first speaker is someone who is so important to my life literally right now. He is a TA of my course. When I first met Brad Toney, I was inspired by his positivity. Even though he's gone through ups and downs, as we'll hear right now, I never see him in a bad mood. And just yesterday, right, when I came to class, there was a lot of going on. We had a bunch of things to get through. There was a break where the students were preparing for a debate. Brad came up to me, very patiently said, "By the way, how's your Thanksgiving?" It's just that moment this character came alive. Brad is a former alum of the course in the spring of 2015, went to Brown undergraduate, and is going to be sharing a value speech with us. The art of giving a value speech is the art of being personal without being private. Brad has chosen to share an important part of his life with us. 5 minutes for what has been one of the most powerful value speeches that we have heard today. Brad, it's a real pleasure to introduce you. How about a warm round of applause?
First of all, just thank you all for taking some time out of your day to listen to me. I hope this will be fun. This speech means a lot to me, and I learned a lot while doing it. So, without further ado. All right. Who is Lilly? Let's start with the facts. She was born in December 1964. She was raised by two parents who would have what is equivalent today to a third-grade education. She raised me in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. She was my first mentor and my most trusted advisor. She always has my best interest in mind, even when we collude in our ideas. She is my mother, and she is very much one of my best friends. However, this best friend is someone who doesn't fully know me and who I don't fully know. I'd always imagine that my best friend would be someone who I confide in, who would always remind me that I'm going on the right path. And indeed, I've been lucky enough to have a few friends like that in my life. And this is actually a picture of me and my mother at a friend's wedding a couple of summers ago when he asked me to be his best man. But this picture is also a reminder of something that my mom told me a few years ago, and she always reminds me of every time that I see her. That she won't attend my wedding if I choose to marry a man. So, years, at the end of every summer, as she would drop me off at Brown, her parting words to me would always include the phrase, "Do the right thing." And she was undeniably proud of me, but she was also ashamed. But I am my mother's son, and when I left her comfortable nest, perched lovingly between two birch trees with long shadows nearly 10 years ago, it wasn't just the continuation of my own personal growth, it was also the beginning of her own initiation of who she is. When I left, my mother really had to ask herself, who is Lilly really? So, prior to my leaving, she had fashioned her life around three main identities and three main roles. The first role was to my dying grandparents during my childhood and early adolescence. The second role was as my primary and sole caregiver. And then the final role was her profession as an occupational therapist. These three roles, the more that I go through life, the more that I realize that those three roles are exhaustive in and of themselves. And they're exhaustive because they left her with little free time to think about who she is. And thinking about myself is a luxury and a privilege that I've had my entire life. So when I went to college, I immediately thought, let me think about myself some more, so let me think about my identity. And in my sophomore year, a professor used a term that has stuck with me ever since, non-heterosexuality. In my mind, this was a brilliant articulation of a way of being. But more than that, it was an articulation of a way of being that denounced the absurd power that heterosexuality had in making the mythology behind our emotional, spiritual, and physical attraction to one another. Agape, thea, and eros, as the Greek would call them. And in my mind, non-heterosexuality debunked this idea of a dichotomy, an absurd dichotomy, between heterosexuality and the overwhelmingly and constantly contested order of letter and numbers, LGBTQ2I, SS2Q, or alphabet soup, as the Greeks would call it, that we commonly use here in the Western canon to describe people's sexuality. In my mind, non-heterosexuality debunks the notion that power has over the separation of ideologies and ideas. And I was so excited to share this with my mother. So year after year, we would debate, contest, argue. What letter do I fall in? What does this mean? And ultimately, after thinking about it more, I realized that to me, the real reason why I liked that term, non-heterosexuality, was because it distinctly made a differentiation between liberation and freedom. Classical notions of liberation have to do with social and legal recognition. But my mother taught me to value freedom, or long-term and sustained self-actualization. I'm sorry. So, I am my mother's son. And even though we still collude in these ideas, my mother taught me that to value life and to value freedom. And I value these things because of her. I don't know who she is in totality, but it follows that if I'm in a process of becoming all the time, then so is she. So in this process of becoming, I hope that one day she can evolve to do something that I hope she will do, which is accept me for who I am. I'm not the same person who I was 10 years ago. I'm not the same person as I was 10 seconds ago. I'm all that and then some. And whereas I can't live in yesterday's pain, I can't live without it. And my mother has nurtured me and supported me through this pain. And I believe that's because she values me as much as I value her. Thank you.